I'm Pauline Forder and I'd like to welcome you to the Metaphorics NAV Know-How webinar. Today we will be looking at VAT reporting, including calc and post VAT settlement and the VAT statement itself. We'll then move on to the year-end process and look at how we close and create a new year and run the close income statement. And our final session for today is currencies, where we'll be looking at the exchange rates and how, if we need to, we can adjust the currency by using the revaluation batch job. So first of all, we'll have a look at our VAT settlement. Before we get into that, it's important that you have a look at the VAT posting setup, as it is the entries in this particular table that are the ones that are used for the calc and post and the VAT statement itself. So the rules are everything that is in this table here must be present in your VAT statement. So going into the VAT section within financial management, we will have a look at the VAT statement itself. And in this particular database, we have two options, and we're going to have a look at the VAT GB one. I'll just make that full screen. And here we can see the layout of our VAT statement. The top section details all the totals, and as you can see in our particular example, we have the box numbers as representative of the old green form that you used to have to fill in, that I obviously know you do online now. To pull this all together, in the lower section of the VAT statement, we have to determine all the various combinations. So you will see from a purchase point of view, we have all the national business posting groups, the EU and the export, and then within those all the VAT product posting groups, so all the various combinations as we saw in the VAT posting setup. So we have a section on purchasing, and in this case it's on the amount field with our sales and the amount fields, and then we go on to the purchase using the base details and sales again. To view our statements, we can just simply go to the statement button at the bottom and preview. We have some options here. The date filter is representative of the VAT quarter that you are running. Now, because this is a Cronus database, our dates are going to look a little strange, but basically we're going to be running it for 2011, January to the 31st, the 3rd, 11. Additional entries that we have to look at here is, do we want to include open, closed, or open and closed? Well, normally you would only be looking at the actual open entries, i.e. those entries that you haven't reconciled up to now. However, because in some instances postings might be backdated into previous VAT quarters, we have the option to determine whether we want to do it within the period, i.e. within the date range that we've specified, or any that are open but before and within the period. So here we can see the various values that have been calculated. Now, in addition to this, we have to check our VAT statement, because our VAT statement is produced by ourselves manually. It's not a system designed screen. We have to validate it against something that's called the calc and post, and this is where Navision goes through the VAT entries and tells you exactly what will be posted when you post it. So if we have a look at our calc and post, we have the options to determine whether we want to filter on particular VAT business and posting groups, but normally you would be reporting on all options. And then in our options tab, we have to say the period that we're going to be reconciling up to. Now again, because there could be some open entries from the previous VAT period, we will always be leaving the starting date as blank to pick those up. And we pop in the ending date of the VAT quarter, in this case 31st of the 3rd 2011. Posting date again is normally representative of that ending date, and then the document number can be anything of your choice. The settlement account, and again in our particular Cronus database, it's their VAT payable account. We specify where the entries are going to be settled to. We have some additional options. We can tick the box to say we want to show the VAT entries, and we can also tick the box to say we want to post. But at this particular point in time, it is important certainly not to tick the post box, because once you have posted your calc and post, there is no going back. So we need to make sure that everything reconciles before we do that. And in the case of the show VAT entries, at this point in time, I'm really just looking at getting a summary that I can tie up to my statement to make sure that my statement is correct. So I'm not going to tick that box either at the moment. I'll go to preview and we can see that we have the report on the right hand side here, and it feedbacks information about the details of how we've run it. We've saying that the posting date is at the end of March 2011, and then in the actual body of the report it breaks down all those combinations again as we saw in our VAT posting setup. So the way you read the report is it details the business posting group, the product posting group, and then the posting type, and goes through all those combinations. So what our task is now is to check that we have got the same information on both of our screens, and the first point of call probably is the total payable or receivable on the VAT here. That should tie up with our total on our report, which I'm very pleased to say it does. We then will go through each of the various entries on our statement, tying it up with our calc and post. So in this case, we'll look at purchases, where the combination is national and VAT 20. We're looking at the VAT amount field rather than the base. So we will then come across to our report. We can come to national, VAT 20, purchase, and check our amount figure here. And indeed that is correct. And we will go through the various other entries. We can see the 579 and the 579 here on that combination national and VAT 5, national VAT 5, and there we are. Same applies to the base amounts. So if we come down to our base amount in our sales, for example, so again, national, VAT 20, come over to our report, national, VAT 20 on our sales, and we have a figure of 10,524 and 2 pence, and again that ties up beautifully. So once we are happy that our figures do reconcile with one another, we know that our VAT statement is reporting the same as what Navision will post. So our next port of call would be to actually print the statement up. And we do everything before we post the calc and post, because as I say, once you have done that, there is no going back. So if we come to our function button now on our VAT statement and print, we can go to the options tab, again pop in our date as per the period, the VAT quarter that we are running, again choosing the open and the before and within period, and again I'm just going to preview that so we can actually see that on our screen. I'll just enlarge that a little bit so we can see that a bit clearer. So we had the details of our statement at the top, how we've run it, and then it breaks through all those summary items at the top of our statement, and then the individual values as per those combinations. So we would print that out, and once we have done that, then we can come back to our calc and post VAT settlement batch job again, come to our options. Now this time, because we are going to be posting the calc and post, we will also print it up and we will show the VAT entries, and this is something obviously that we would need to keep for the HMRC. As I say, we're going to actually post it this time, so tick the post box, and then the trigger to actually carry out that action is both if you print and or if you preview. So again, I'm going to do the preview so that we can see the results of that posting. And it says, little reminder, are you sure you want to post it? So yes, please. So here we are, we have the details of the quarter that we're posting, and then in each of the combinations, because we have chosen to print the details, we now have all the entries that make up those values all the way through to the bottom. So that is posting your VAT settlement. And now we will move on to how we close our year. So first of all, I'm just going to go back, closing all my screens, and the way that we close our year, our financial year, is initially we have to go to the calendar setup, and then within calendar setup we go to the accounting period button at the bottom and year. And in here we can see that we have 2 years designated here, 2009 and 2010. We have already closed 29, so we're now in the process of closing 2010. So to do that, we would just have to come to the functions button and close year, but there is a check that is going to be made, and when I do say close year, it tells me that I must create a new fiscal year before I can close the old year. So in order to do that, I can again just come back to my functions button, and this time choose the create fiscal year. I always advise to create the years through this process, because in doing so, Navision will actually create all the months behind the scenes as well, so that saves you having to do that particular task. So create fiscal year. It already knows that we're now in year 2011. We can specify the number of months, normally 12. The only time you would change that is if indeed your financial year changed, if you moved from January to a March beginning of the year, etc. So we will leave that as 12 months, and the length is 1M, and we just simply say OK, and now we can see that 2011 has now been generated. So at this point we can now close our 2010 year. So back to our functions and close year, and it reminds us of the year that we're now proposing to close, and it states that once the financial year has been closed that it cannot be reopened, and the periods in the financial year cannot be changed. Do we wish to continue? So again we will say yes. Just because, however, that we have closed the financial year, it doesn't mean that we can't go back into that year and make postings. That is still totally valid. So once we have created our new year, closed the year that we want to close, our next step is to run the close income statement, and we find that in the periodic activities, financial year and close income statement. Again, when Navision does this, it knows the last year that you have just closed, so it will automatically populate that for you. You then have to specify which journal that you want the entries to be entered into. General journal template, you have a choice, but normally we would recommend using the general journal template. As far as the batch is concerned though, of course you can create whichever batch you'd like to. We've created one called year end, and you'll notice that we haven't assigned a number series to it because we want to generate that ourselves. So we'll pop in the document number. So again, we can call it whatever we would like to. That's better. Retained earnings account. So once the income statements accounts have been closed, where do we want, excuse me, where do we want that to go? So we have here in our Cronus database our retained earnings account, and then Navision again will auto-populate a posting description. You may want to change it or just add to it. It's entirely up to you. Now for those people that have dimensions within their database, if those are set as code mandatory on the various GL accounts, then you will need to specify those dimensions within the close income statement routine. Otherwise, when you come to post your journal, you will get dimension errors. You do that by just selecting the Assist Edit drill down, the little 3 dots, and then just select those dimensions that are applicable to your particular database. If you don't want to close with the dimensions, it would mean that you would have to go through all of your GL accounts and remove the code mandatories, do your close income statement, post the journal, and then reset your code mandatories again. But that option is entirely up to you. So once we have selected our dimension codes, we say OK, and then they are indeed populated in the dimensions area. We say OK and it will run through the process. Now, dependent on the size of your database and the number of dimensions that you are recording, that process could take a little time, and for some of our customers I know that they prefer to run that process overnight, so set it running and then come in the morning and have their results. Once it is completed, it says the journal lines have been created, so we can come to our general journals and into our year-end batch. Just get rid of that blank line at the top. Okay, and you'll notice that the GL accounts are indeed duplicated. So for example, here we have several entries for GL account 6110, and that is because of the various dimension combinations. So you'll notice that the customer code, small, medium, large, etc., various area codes, and then the business codes and the salespeople code. So dependent on how many dimensions you use, you will find that your journal is split across those different combinations for each of the GL codes. Now at this point, this is when your work begins, because you will be checking to make sure that these figures are what you were expecting to see. If you are unhappy about any of the entries, then you simply just can highlight all the lines, delete the journal lines, post any corrections or whatever it is, and run the process again. However, if you are happy, then you can simply post the journal as you would do normally, but I must stress, if you don't delete the lines here and then you run the closing income statement again, it will duplicate the lines for you. So if you're happy that the journal can be posted, it's simply just a case of post and post, or post and print. Or as I say, if you're not happy, then simply delete the lines and then come back after you've made your corrections, back to your fiscal year, close income statement, and then just run it again with a document number, of course. If you have already posted your first income statement journal, and you've now posted some corrections or adjustments, you would just go through this process again, and the journal will be repopulated, that's better, with the new entries that you have posted, and you can run the the closing income statement as many times as required. As I say, when you are happy though, you can then simply come in, post and print. So we have gone through our VAT reconcile process, our close year and closing income statement process, and now last but not least, we will have a look at the currencies. So from our financial management setup and general and currencies. Now this table here represents all the currencies that you deal with. I do recommend that if you don't use all of them, then you just delete those ones that aren't applicable. This just means that users can't inadvertently pick up the wrong currency on their documents. This table contains information about where you're going to be posting your realised and unrealised gains and losses from a GL perspective. It explains how many decimal places that you want to deal with. So here, 2 decimal places to a maximum of 2, and some other rounding information. Then against each of our currencies, we must enter the exchange rates, and we do that through the exchange rate button at the bottom of our screen. In this table, you enter the exchange rate on the basis that how often that you update them. If you do it daily, weekly, monthly, then you will just simply come in and pop in the starting date from when the new currency would be applicable. So in this case, I'm going to do it as January 2011. and then I will come in and enter the new value. So this is probably changed already with current affairs, but I'm just going to put in what I looked back at for 2011, so not relevant, obviously 2016, and pop it in for the exchange rate amount and the adjusted exchange rate amount. It's the adjusted exchange rate amount here that is going to be used when we do our revaluation. Oops, that's better. Okay. So this last column I'd just like to highlight to you. It's fixed exchange rate amount. So what this is saying to you is that you can determine, dependent on how you want to control your currencies, but as I have said here, related currency is fixed. It means that the pound, i.e. the local currency in this case, is set, and it'll always be a pound. However, when I'm in various documents, so sales or purchase documents, if I want to, I can actually override the figure that is the default here in the table. It's entirely up to you whether you utilise that or not, but Navision just gives you that flexibility. So if your customers and vendors, or if you offer your customer a special rate, or your vendors offer you a particular special rate, then on the individual documents you can specify that if you haven't fixed the currency rate. So from here on in, as we post our documents into 2011, Navision will come into this table, look at the starting date and apply the rate as on that line. So once we have that set up, what we would then want to do, if we come back, is to then revalue our currencies for the new value, as in at the end or the beginning of the new month. And we do that through the financial management, period activities and currencies, and this time we're going to look at the adjust exchange rate batch job. On the options tab, we are asked to specify when we want the records revaluated, the transactions. So we're going to revalue anything up to the end of January 2011. We don't put a starting date in because we want to include any open entries from previous periods. The posting description, there is some codes here, that variable codes that will bring in the currency code and the currency value, so that will auto-populate for you. You pop in the posting date. In this case we are going to be doing this at the end of January 2011, and then we can pop in a document number of our choice. And you'll notice that the routine will adjust both the customer, vendor and bank account entries. So when we have our options tab populated, we can simply go to the OK button and it will run through those entries for us. So if we come back to our period activities, currency, we can now have a look at the exchange rate adjustment registers to see if there was anything actually adjusted. And we can see here there is these entries on the 31st of the 1st 2011, and it's telling us what has actually been adjusted. So we have some customer and bank and vendor records that have been revalued based on that new valuation code. And we can see this in actual details if we go to, for example, one of our customers, and it is indeed this customer. I was quite happy to find that there. And we will go to the ledger entries, and then from the ledger entries we will go to the detailed ledger entries, and here we can see that there was an entry here and it has been revalued, so an unrealised gain of 526. So we have full audit track of everything that has happened. Okay, so we have now come to the end of our session for today. I hope you have enjoyed looking at VAT, currencies and close income statement with me. And thank you for joining, and I look forward to meeting with you again soon. Goodbye.